3 sinister night shift tales. Spine-chilling horror stories exposed from Alone at Work. Volume 5-inch. Emily sat alone in the darkened corners of the abandoned factory, the weight of something sinister pressing down on her. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that twisted into the flickering remnants of a hellish past, a past filled with the echoes of lost souls and mysterious disappearances. Tonight felt like a fresh nightmare, a fresh horror as she tried to drown out the haunting folklore swirling around her. She chalked it up to her overactive imagination, but when she caught a glimpse of a familiar shadow darting into the black abyss, her heart stopped. It was Tom, her old colleague who had vanished months ago. Panic clawed at her throat as she remembered the chilling tales whispered on the streets outside. Accusations of cover-ups, threats whispered in the night, danger looming around every corner. She blinked and the figure was gone, but the fear was ignited, burning in her chest like wildfire. The hours dragged on like molasses, stretching an unsettling silence that screamed in her ears. Each noise that pierced through the stillness, a scraping sound from above. The gas line hissing like a snake sent her heart racing faster. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, just machinery settling or the wind playing tricks. But deep inside, that primal instinct screamed that she was not alone. An icy chill crawled down her spine. Something was terribly wrong. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emily stumbled upon a hidden room, its entryway concealed behind a rusted door. What she found inside sent her into a spiraling void of abhorrence. Photographs creased with age, memos stained with secrets, and documents depicting unethical decisions lay sprawled across the cramped space. The truth rushed over her like an icy wave. This factory wasn't just a lifeless shell. It was a living testament to betrayal, a shrine to greed buried in lies. The terror bubbled, simmering just beneath the surface. Could those she trusted, the very authorities who encouraged her to keep watch, be complicit in this nightmare? The shadows seemed to twist menacingly around her, whispering secrets she'd rather not know. But the urgency of her heart became blaring sirens, warning her of a truth that could not be ignored. Just as she turned to flee, footsteps echoed through the hall, a slow, deliberate cadence that made her blood run cold. The familiar figure reappeared. Tom stood there, but this time something in his eyes was off, hollow, devoid of humanity. A haunting presence that struck terror deep in her core. The chase was on. She felt that relentless grip of fear as she darted through the crumbling corridors, desperate to escape the nightmare her safe haven had become. Who could she trust in a place where darkness danced with betrayal, and which shadow harbored the most terrifying truths? As her breath hitched and her heart pounded, a chilling thought raced through her mind. Sometimes, the monster lurking in the shadows is not the one hiding in the darkness. The real horror is standing right beside you, smiling in the light. Emily's heart raced, the sound of her pulse drowning out the eerie whispers that flitted around her like moths drawn to a flame. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, but the heavy air seemed to root her to the spot. The metal door creaked as she wheeled around, only to find Tom still standing there, a ghost from her past. The flickering lights above painted his face grotesque shades of yellow and green, his expression forever locked in a haunting grin. Emily, his voice was soft, almost familiar, but that unsettling edge sent shivers down her spine. Why didn't you come looking for me? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. What had he become? What had happened to him in those dark months? She shook her head in denial, backing away, her mind screaming for her feet to move. Tom took a hesitant step forward, his hands stretching out toward her, but the vacant gaze in his eyes filled her with dread. They seemed to flicker, dark, alive with a haunting light, as if something else was looking back at her. Don't you remember how this place was? He continued, his voice barely above a whisper. as if the factory itself could hear them. How they made us turn a blind eye. Each word wrapped around her throat like a noose. The photographs, the memos, had they done something terrible here? At that moment, fragments of whispered rumors collided in her brain. Workers unaccounted for. People claiming to sense something off. Had they been silencing their own? "Why are you like this?" she stammered, her voice trembling as she edged toward another exit. His laugh was a chilling sound, devoid of warmth. "You'll find the truth, Emily. You have to. But it won't set you free." He paused, laughter echoing into the dark corners of the factory. "You'll wish it hadn't." With every word, she felt the shadows grow thicker, wrapping around her ankles and pulling her closer to the darkness. The factory felt alive, as if its very walls were replaying torment, urging her to face what lay within. Emily tried to gather her thoughts, but panic surged through her veins, immobilizing her. "Emily!" A sudden crash echoed in the distance, snapping her back to reality. The sound reverberated through the factory, causing the floor beneath her to vibrate. It was a warning, a haunting herald of the danger encroaching. Tom's smile faded, his hollow eyes dimming as a shadow, much darker than his own, loomed behind him. In one swift motion, he was gone, fading into the abyss from which he emerged. Emily felt the breath freeze in her lungs. No, this wasn't the time to falter. With grit coursing through her, she bolted down a narrow corridor, adrenaline pushing her legs faster, heart hammered against her ribcage. But the factory seemed to stretch infinitely before her, the entryways shifting, walls that once knew where to turn now taunting her. "Calm down. Think." Panic was a slippery slope. Just as she spotted an exit at the end of the hall, she heard rasping breaths, sharp and labored, peering tentatively over her shoulder. She saw them emerge from the shadows, figures, faceless, shrouded in darkness, moving towards her as if summoned by her fear. "Emily, help us!" Their voices melded into a chaotic symphony, calling her name, but their movements were erratic, made her blood run cold. She spun back around to take flight once more, her instincts screaming against it all. The exit door was beckoning, but could she reach it in time? The menacing shadows grew thicker, closing in, suffocating the light, and with every hurried heartbeat, she realized. The true horror was not just the shadows lurking within this forsaken factory, it was the voices of those lost that echoed from beyond. As she reached for the door, fingertips brushing the cold metal, a heavy hand landed on her shoulder. What waited for her beyond the threshold? Was escape truly possible? Or had she already stepped into a nightmare she could never leave? The moment that heavy hand gripped her shoulder, a jolt of icy terror shot through Emily. It felt like time stopped, every sound swallowed by her racing heart. She spun around, half expecting to find Tom again, with those unsettling eyes. Instead, she was met by nothing. The hallway was empty, just shadows dancing on the walls like mocking ghosts. She blinked, searching for traces of whoever or whatever had touched her, but the air was stagnant, eerily silent. She took a step back from the door, staring at it as if it had betrayed her. "Get it together," she muttered to herself, forcing her feet to move. She had to push through. As she moved deeper into the factory, the whispering grew louder, swirling around her like a blizzard of dread. "Help us, Emily!" Their voices melded together, rising and falling, taunting her with their sorrow. Panic clawed at her chest. Was this a trick? A trap set by the factory itself? Sweat dripped from her brow, and the musty air settled heavily around her, thickening like an impending storm. She could feel eyes on her, unseen watchers lurking in darkened corners, their presence a relentless weight. Each step seemed to echo down the corridors, reverberating off the walls like a warning, driving her further toward the heart of the factory. With every twist and turn, she caught glimpses of faint, flickering lights ahead, barely illuminating the way but beckoning her like a beacon. She stumbled toward one of those distant glimmers, but the shadows seemed to stretch and claw at her, trying to pull her back. "Emily!" The sudden shout pierced through the whispers, halting her in her tracks. Her breath caught in her throat. It was Tom again. "You shouldn't have come here." "You're not ready." "Ready for what?" she yelled back, her voice trembling. Waves of cold washed over her, sparking the hairs on the back of her neck. "The truth. You don't understand." Tom stepped closer, that ghastly grin returning. "They're not just lost. They want to take you with them." Chilling fear settled in her bones. She glanced back, half expecting the faceless figures to burst from the shadows, but they remained just out of reach, shrouded in darkness. "What do you mean? Who wants to take me?" Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "Everyone," he snarled, laughter twisting into something grotesque. "Don't you see? This place, it's not a factory. It's a prison. They're hungry." Emily fought the urge to flee, to turn and run from whatever sinister fate was awaiting her. She took a step back, her instincts screaming at her. But then something shifted in the shadows. Dark forms appeared, slithering through the dim light. Faces began to take shape, pale and tortured, mouths agape as if silently crying out. The air felt charged with desperation and rage. "Emily, come play with us." Their whispers slithered around her, tugging at her consciousness, filling her mind with dread. Terror pooled in her stomach as she steadied herself, knowing that every second mattered. Could she trust Tom? Did she have the strength to confront what lay before her? "Hurry, you must decide," he urged, a desperation creeping into his voice. "They won't wait much longer." In that moment, her choices narrowed down. She could either confront the remnants of this nightmare or surrender herself to the shadows. The hallway seemed to pulse with life, time slipping away dangerously fast. As the faces loomed closer, she felt the decision mirrored in her heart, heavy and uncertain. Then, the lights flickered one last time before plunging her into darkness. What horrors awaited in the pitch black? Could she find a way to escape, or would she lose herself in the chaos of the damned? Emily's breath hung in the darkness like a fog, suffocating and still. She clenched her fists, straining her ears for any sound amid the oppressive silence, hoping to distinguish friend from foe. The echoes of Thomas' warning replayed in her mind. "They want to take you with them." What did that even mean? As she stood frozen, adrenaline fired through her veins. She had to move. With trembling hands, she took a single step forward, her foot landing softly against the cold concrete floor. The darkness coiled around her, a palpable presence, almost alive. She squinted, searching for traces of light, any sign that could guide her out of this suffocating void. But nothing came. No flicker, no gleam, just the sound of her own pulse thundering in her ears. "Come on," she whispered, urging herself to keep going. And then, out of the stillness, she heard a faint rustle, a whisper of movement just behind her. Her heart raced as she spun around, but still, there was only darkness. The oppressive shadows felt thicker, pushing in, closing ranks against her. She bit back a whimper, clawing at her resolve. "Emily," the voice was soft, seductive, almost cooing. It wrapped around her like a warm blanket, but the chill that followed sent icy fingers down her spine. "Join us." An image flickered in her mind. The faces from before, those tortured expressions twisted in agony. Hunger reflected in their hollow eyes. They wanted her. She sprinted down the corridor, her feet pounding the ground, breath coming in sharp gasps. The whispers layered over each other, building a cacophony of urgency. "Help us. Come play. Don't leave." Each step felt more desperate, as if the very factory was alive, shifting and swirling around her, reshaping itself to trap her. She stumbled, skidding against the wall, her hands meeting the rough, cool bricks for stability. "Emily, this way." Tom's voice sliced through the din, guiding her deeper into the maze. Despite the terror, something in his tone spoke of urgency, of hope. She pushed off the wall, flying toward the source of the voice. At the end of the corridor, a door loomed, slightly ajar, a sliver of pale light spilling around the edges. She lunged forward, the door giving way to her desperate shove. Inside, the room was dim but filled with a haunting glow where a series of monitors blinked to life. Each screen showed the same chilling images. Souls trapped, lost in despair, eyes frozen wide, mouth stretched in perpetual agony. Emily felt bile rise in her throat. This was the truth Tom spoke of, the souls of those who had entered the factory only to become stories told in hushed voices. Emily! Tom's voice echoed again, more frantic now. She turned to see him at the doorway, fear etched across his face. You have to shut it down. Shut what down? She stammered, her mind racing. That. He pointed to the monitors, their glow pulsating ominously. Feeds off fear, it needs you to stay. You have to confront it. But how? The shadows at the edges of the room writhed, clawing at her ankles, pulling her back toward the hallway. She could feel their insatiable desire, as if they were preparing to draw her into their dark embrace. The ghost's whispers rose, drowning out her thoughts. Join us, be one of us. What could she do? Emily's heart raced as she longed to flee but knew there was no route to safety. The only way to escape this nightmare was to confront it head-on. I will not be like you, she shouted, a surge of strength pushing back against the tide of despair. Tom stepped forward. You can end this. Embrace the fear. Without fully understanding the leap she was taking, Emily reached for the nearest monitor, fingers trembling as she connected with the cold surface. Images flickered violently now, trapped faces pleading, blackened with despair. She shut her eyes tightly, focusing all her will against that darkness. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted. The screens erupted in static, illuminating the room for a brief moment. And then silence fell. The room went dark again. Emily! Tom shouted, panic lacing his voice. What did you do? But that blinding moment began to fade, and darkness poured back in. Had she made things better or worse? In the pitch black, the shadows surged forward, hungry again. Her heart pounded like thunder. Then, from the dark, a sinister screech pierced through the silence. Come back, you can't escape us. What had she unleashed in her desperate bid for freedom? With dread settling deep in her stomach, Emily realized she was far from finished in the fight against the terror that lurked not just in the shadows, but in her own soul. A new sound echoed, a soft clicking, like broken gears coming to life. The factory was waking up. What was assembling in the dark? What new horrors awaited her? Emily's heart raced as the soft clicking morphed into a rhythmic whirring, machinery awakening from a long slumber. The shadows seemed to dance, pulsating in time with the eerie sound, almost mocking her as if they had gained a new life. Tom! She shouted, but her voice cracked, slipping away into the darkness. She felt exposed, vulnerable, a single candle flickering in a windstorm. Tom had just seconds to find her, but the factory encased her like a tomb. Over here. His voice finally broke through the darkness, a beacon of urgency. She scrambled toward him, driven by sheer instinct. Don't look back. As she turned, each step crescendoed with a strange, hungry murmur, wrapping around her like chains. The whispers were clearer now, revealing their true intentions. We are waiting for you. She stumbled into Tom, who grabbed her arm tightly. We have to get to the control room. It's on the second floor, past the assembly lines. That S where they pull energy from fear. With each passing second, the clicking shifted to a more chaotic racket. It sounded like metal grinding against metal, like teeth gnashing. Emily's stomach turned. What is that? She gasped. Tom's eyes were wide, glancing toward the source of the noise. It's them. They're activating. We're running out of time. Together, they dashed down a hallway, following a maze of flickering emergency lights that barely cut through the encroaching darkness. The curling shadows shrieked behind them, the temperature dropping as they neared the assembly hall. Just keep moving, Tom shouted. Stick to the pathway. Emily's feet felt heavy, sinking with fear, each echoing footfall hitting like a hammer. What if we don't make it? The doubt clawed at her mind, but another voice flickered in her head, their whispers renewing. Join us. No, she yelled, that single word spiraling into the void, pushing at the voices trying to grip her. She would not be another lost soul. Suddenly, a figure loomed ahead in the faint light, a twisted silhouette with gnarled limbs. Panic surged as the figure stepped closer, revealing a contorted face, its mouth stretched unnaturally wide. The entity was a grotesque amalgamation of machinery and the tormented, merging flesh and metal into an images of pure horror. "Help us," Emily it rasped, voice drenched in agony, eyes glinting red like embers stoked to life. Emily froze, feeling every ounce of will drain from her body. "Don't listen. Run." Tom's voice jolted her back to reality. They darted past the creature. As they moved, the grotesque form wretchedly howled, echoing in the dark. It was a sound of despair, a desperate chant for another soul. As they reached a set of stairs leading up, a wall of shadow surged from behind, coiling viciously. The factory was alive and it was hungry. Emily's pulse quickened. She had to reach the control room. There had to be a way out. With Tom pulling her up the stairs, darkness clawed at their heels. Each step was a battle against the crushing dread that threatened to overcome her resolve. "Almost there," he grunted, determination burning in his eyes. "Tom, we need to hurry." They burst into a large room at the top, cluttered with old machinery and flickering equipment, all wrapped in thick cables that slithered like serpents across the floor. The monitors here were alive, spinning in random patterns, displaying the anguished faces of those trapped in the factory. "Over there," Tom pointed as he rushed toward a large console flickering with light. Emily followed closely, but the shadows unfurled behind her, stretching toward their prey. "Help us," the voices beckoned again, a haunting lullaby. "Join us forever." Tom slammed his hands against the console, mechanics whirring to life, but Emily's focus waned. The shadows couldn't just engulf her. They were pulling her in, whispering promises of release and belonging. "No," she screamed, feeling their grasp tighten around her legs. In one desperate bid, she yanked away from the edge of surrender. "I will not," she shouted, slamming her palm onto the console beside Tom's. The room erupted with blinding light as alarms blared, pulsing panic into the structures surrounding her. The shadows writhed violently, shrieking, swirling into chaotic forms as if imploding from their own desperation. "What did you do?" Tom yelled, energy crackling around them. "Maybe I unleashed something worse," Emily whispered, fear lacing her voice. The walls trembled, cracking ominously as the very fabric of the factory began to fray. And then came the sound, a low, rumbling growl that shook through the ground like thunder. It reverberated through her bones, rattling her core. A monstrous shadow surged forward, more solid, more terrible than any she had ever witnessed. This was no longer a place of despair. It had become a battleground. Emily's fate was entwined with this entity now, each heartbeat a countdown to terror. What could they do next when everything they thought they knew about the factory was shattered? The lights surged brighter, blinding Emily for a split second before she could see what loomed before them. The monstrous shadow was no longer a forgotten wisp in the dark. It was a titan, a nightmare made flesh and metal. It towered over them, its grotesque form twisting and shifting, each movement sending chills coursing through her body. "It's coming for us," Tom shouted, his voice barely piercing through the chaos surrounding them. Emily could only nod frantically. The ground beneath them trembled, a message from the factory itself, a reminder that they were eternally trapped inside this labyrinth of despair. The moment felt suspended in time as the shadow gazed down, its fiery eyes locking onto Emily's. "Join us, be with us," the voices cascaded from its mouth, echoing within the very marrow of her bones. With every word, Emily felt the dreadful grip tighten around her heart, squeezing her resolve like a vice. "No," she gasped, shaking her head violently. She was losing herself again, almost teetering off the edge of consciousness. "Focus. We have to find a way to stop it," Tom yelled, his urgency cutting through the fog of dread that clouded her mind. He was desperately mashing buttons on the console, his fingers a blur as he initiated commands that might stave off the horror. "I can't believe I even touched this thing," Emily shouted back, her voice unsteady. Fear and desperation crackled in the air around them. The monstrous entity lurched forward, lunging with predatory grace. Emily barely had time to react as Tom yanked her arm, pulling her back just in time. They stumbled together, falling against the cold metal of the console, and the world blurred into chaos. "Move!" Tom bellowed, as they scrambled to stand. The entity was unfurling like a black flower of despair, revealing jagged teeth that glimmered with a sinister hunger. They had seconds, maybe even less. "Where do we go?" Emily cried, her heart thudding erratically. "We can't outrun this thing. Not out. Down." Tom pointed towards a narrow service door that had briefly cracked open, a sliver of light cutting through the shadows. "It has to be a way out." They dashed toward the door. Emily could feel the oppressive darkness clawing at her heels. She knew it was following, the whispers intensifying, drowning out all rational thought. "Join us. Forever." Ignoring the voices was becoming impossible. It was as if they were probing her mind, each whisper a knife cutting deeper into her will. Tom reached the door first, wrenching it open with brute force. "Now," he urged, and she dove in without hesitation, throwing herself into the unknown. The small corridor felt claustrophobic, walls of steel enclosing her like a tight noose. As they ran deeper into the small passage, a terrifying sound echoed behind them, the grinding of metal, the screech of gears accompanied by the entity's roars of rage. They sprang forward, heart racing, adrenaline flooding through their veins. The flickering lights in the corridor overhead started to fail, plunging them into periodic darkness. Each time the lights flickered, the entity's shadows crawled closer. Emily's breath hitched. They had to hurry. "Keep going. We'll find a way out," Tom yelled, determination lacing his voice. Just then, the oppressive air thickened. A blinding flash emerged from beyond a door slightly ajar at the end of the corridor, illuminating words scrawled on the wall. "Caution. They feed on fear." Emily met Tom's gaze, terror coursing through them both. "Are they feeding?" she stammered, the implications sinking in. As if answering her question, the walls vibrated with sounds of countless tormented souls crying out in agony. The factory was alive, evolving, and they were far from safe. "Tom." Emily seized his arm. "What if we can't stop it? What if we do?" He shot back, his resolve unwavering. Every instinct warned her that turning back was the only option. But this wasn't just about survival anymore. They were in this together, against something far greater than themselves. "On three," Tom exclaimed, clutching the door handle. "1, 2, 3. They both yanked it open, and as the door swung wide, they were faced with a room that defied reality. Inside lay the control center of the factory, a heart of machinery pulsing with energy. But that energy wasn't a lifeline. It was a venomous pulse waiting to be unleashed. And in the center of it all stood an apparition, a figure veiled in shadows, its features distorted and morphing into what looked like the faces of the trapped, the very entities that haunted their nightmares. "Welcome home," it whispered with a voice that resonated within the chamber. Fear rooted them both to the spot, but Emily dug deep, her lungs filling with a sense of furious determination. How could they fight against something so insidious? "Tom, what do we do?" she gasped. But even before he could answer, the machine whirred one last time, raising its monstrous head in anticipation, ready for its next meal of terror. Emily felt a flicker of desperation that threatened to consume her whole. The grip of the shadows fluttered around her again, drawing toward the entity with grotesque eagerness. The final moment loomed thick in the air. They had to act now, but at what cost? With dread pooling in her stomach, Emily whispered to herself, "There's no turning back." What had they awoken in the depths of this hellish factory, and how could they harness their own fear to survive? The room pulsed with an almost tangible energy, the shadows flickering like unnatural flames. Emily's heart raced against her ribcage, a primal reaction to the horror unfolding before them. The figure in the center twisted and contorted, its face a collage of despairing expressions that sent shivers cascading down her spine. "Emily, we have to do something." Tom's voice broke through her trance, urgently punctuated by the sound of grinding metal behind them. The entity's roar echoed, a monstrous reminder that time was slipping away. "Right? But what?" she stammered, fear clawing at her throat. "What can we do against that?" In the depths of her panic, an idea began to form. She thought of the words on the wall, "They feed on fear." In them lay a glimmer of hope, a chance to turn the tide. Maybe she hesitated, terrified of what she was about to suggest. Maybe if we confront it, face our fear? Tom's eyes widened. You're suggesting we what? Let it feed on us? No, but we could use it against this thing. It thrives on our dread. What if we show it we're not afraid? Emily felt a pulse of defiance sparking within her. Are you crazy? That thing feeds on fear. It'll twist that bravado into terror. Then we have no choice, she whispered, heart pounding with determination. We have to try. Before Tom could respond, the entity lunged forward, its monstrous figure surging through the ambient light. Emily and Tom barely dodged to the side, the air cracking with an electric intensity. Now, she yelled. We can't wait. We have to do this together. With every ounce of courage they could muster, they steadied themselves. Emily took a deep breath and shouted, You don't scare me. We want to join you. Not now, not ever. Tom joined her, the tremor in his voice replaced with fierce resolve. You're just a shadow. Nothing but a collection of lost souls. The response was instantaneous. The entity screeched, a cacophony of the many voices trapped within it blending into a horrific sound. The walls shuddered, a reminder of their confinement. But Emily felt an odd warmth blooming inside her. Something about their united stand strained the oppressive dark, nearly illuminating the room with defiance. Keep going, she encouraged him, emboldened. Don't stop. Feeds on fear and we want to let it. The room shook violently, machinery whirring in protest as if the factory itself were retaliating against their newfound strength. The shadow around the entity flickered and distorted, shrinking as Emily and Tom forged ahead, their voices ringing out like bannermen snatching victory from the jaws of despair. But this victory was short-lived. Darkness enveloped them again, thick and suffocating. Tom's shaky breath beside her reminded Emily that fear still lurked, waiting to pounce. I can feel it, Tom gasped, just trying to break through. The essence of their resolve shimmered, but cracks began to form. Emily's heart sank as she saw the shadow rise again, taking a monstrous shape, unfurling its jagged teeth toward them, hungry and ready to devour their wavering courage. Don't let it in. Focus, she yelled, struggling against the sheer terror pressing in on them. But just as hope shimmered on the edge of threat, Emily felt the sinister whispers crawling into her mind. You're afraid. You're trapped. Join us forever. As if on cue, the lights flickered, their weak glow barely pushing back the all-consuming darkness. The whispers pressed around her, piercing through her thoughts like needles. It was the very horror they fought against, grasping for their deepest fears. Tom, she screamed, clutching his arm as panic pressed heavily against her lungs. Fight it. Don't listen. As if channeling her fear, the entity seemed to grow in power. The distortion of its form sharpened into something more defined, something personal. Faces twisted in anguish shimmered through the darkness, each one reflecting memories and fears long buried. Emily, Tom started, but the sense of dread loomed heavily, squeezing his words away. No, we can't give in, she cried, fighting against the flood of doubt. We have to break free. But even as she fought against the whispers, an overwhelming wave of despair crashed over her. They were outmatched, confronted with their own selves, the fear that gnawed at them every day. The entity let out a roar, filled with both fury and hunger, reverberating like the death knell of their hope. In that moment, Emily knew this was their pivotal chance to either drown in darkness or shatter the chains binding them. Tom, we cannot let it win. We have to embrace our fear. His eyes dragged away from the shadows for just a moment. You think that will work? What else do we have left? The motions of the factory whirred in the background, but the oppressive screams began to dissolve into hushed cries, as if the entity sensed their struggle. Together, on three again. But the creature wasn't going to let them. Shadows were surging toward them, the walls trembling as if the factory itself was bending to the will of the darkness. Let us, but before she could finish, The lights blinked out completely. In the suffocating blackness, a single word grazed her and Tom's ears, echoing through the void. Feed. What had they unleashed in their defiance? And could their final stand against fear really be the key to their escape? Emily felt the darkness wrap around her like a vice, squeezing her breath away. Panic clawed at her insides. Her heart thundered in her chest, the sound drowning out the guttural moans of the entity. "Tom!" she shouted, though her voice felt weak in the oppressive gloom. She reached for him, but there was nothing but cold air. "Emily?" came his distant voice, sounding strained and fragile. "I can't see you. Where are you? Stay close. We can't lose each other." She stumbled forward, her foot catching on an unseen object. With a grunt, she hit the ground hard. Sharp pain shot through her knee, but she pushed it down. The whispers filled the air, mocking her with every breath. "You're alone, no one can help you." Ignoring the anguish, she groped in the darkness, struggling to locate Tom. It felt like an eternity until her hand finally brushed against his arm, cool and trembling. "Let us find a way out," she urged, anchoring herself to him. "Did it work?" Tom's voice trembled, pulled by threads of fear. "Are we free?" Before she could reply, the entity roared once more, a sound that vibrated through the ground beneath them. The mere force of it rattled the walls, shaking loose debris that rained down like deadly confetti. "No, it's not over," she gasped, grasping his hand tighter. "We have to keep fighting." The shadows writhed around them, thick and greasy, curling against her legs as if alive. Emily focused on the sensation of Tom's warm grip, grounding herself. "It feeds on darkness," she said, more to herself than him, "so we have to find the light." "Light?" Tom echoed. "How?" "There's nothing here. Feel for it. Search through your mind. Things that make you happy, the good memories. Those feelings are our light." Slowly, in the murky dark, she coaxed memories to life. She remembered summers spent playing in sunlight, laughter ringing through the air. She clung to the idea of being young and carefree, that small flicker of joy slipping through the cracks of despair. "Emily!" Tom shouted suddenly. "I see something." Her pulse quickened as she turned toward him. But when she followed his gaze, there was only the swirling black mass lurking at the edges of their vision. "What did you see?" she asked, her voice urgent. "Wait, look." He pointed. A glimmer of warmth unfurled, shimmering like embers. "Yes, that's it." Emily screamed in exhilaration, heart igniting with hope. Together, they stepped toward the light, Tom pulling her forward as the darkness roared in fury. Shadows lashed out at them, sharp and biting, but she pushed through the pain, the warmth guiding her home. "I won. Let it win," she yelled, her voice piercing the cacophony. "We are stronger than it thinks." As they neared the light, it expanded, bathing them in golden brilliance that flickered like candle flames. The shadows shrank back, writhing as if in agony. The growls and wails grew frantic, losing their bite. "Keep going," she urged, her feet pounding the ground with renewed vigor. Just as they reached the source, the light surged, enveloping Emily and Tom completely. For a moment it felt like they were free, pulled away from the grasp of the entity. But then, a deafening crack rang through the air, slashing through the radiance. The light flickered, and with it, a hideous cackle twisted from the shadows that still clung to the corners of the room. The sound seemed to weave through their minds, sowing seeds of doubt and fear once more. "Do you think they can save you?" it taunted, the fury of its voice echoing. "Without fear, they are nothing." "No," Emily shouted defiantly, casting a glance at Tom. "We won. Let you in again." But even as the words left her lips, the shadows coalesced, forming a grotesque face of twisted memories. She felt the tug of familiarity, fragments of her past swarming around her, a burst of anxiety, a moment of regret, all clawing for her attention. "Remember when you failed?" It hissed. "When you let everyone down." The air grew colder with each word it spoke. She could feel Thomas' grip tightening, his breath coming in rapid bursts. "Emily, it's trying to get in again. Focus," she shouted, digging deep for every ounce of hope she had left. "We're not afraid of what you throw at us." But doubt seeped in like a poison, trickling through Tom's expression. Emily felt a fracture begin in their unity, a crack threatening to split their resolve. "Tom," she cried, urgency rising. They could not allow fear to unravel their fight. Suddenly, the walls began to tremble violently, pieces of the factory rattling loose. The light flickered again, reducing to a dim pulse as if responding to their growing fear. With one last surge of strength, Emily screamed, "Together! We face this together! Do you hear me?" But at that moment, the ground shook harder, and the entity roared, "Feed!" The darkness surged around them one last time, a tidal wave of despair crashing in as they braced for impact. Continuing the fight against the flood of fear that threatened to consume them, Emily wondered, would they stand strong enough to resist? In that heartbeat of anticipation hung the question. Could the light of their courage truly shatter the darkness, or would they be lost forever to the shadows of their own terror? The tremors ricocheted through Emily's body as the darkness engulfed them whole. It pressed in on all sides, suffocating and viscous, a living entity determined to crush their spirits. Emily pulled Tom close, but the shadows were relentless. They roared, a deafening cacophony that seemed to mock their bravery. "Hold on," she shrieked, feeling the walls of despair close in. Her heart raced, and she could taste the metallic tang of fear on her tongue. "Think of the light. Think of anything." Tom's breath quickened, panic flaring in his eyes. "Emily, I can't see anything. I can't remember." His voice trembled, torn between hope and despair. "Focus. We are not letting it win." She groped the air above them, searching desperately for any glimmer of warmth, any sign that their emotions could push through the suffocating void. "Remember that sunset at the lake. Remember the music we played at the bonfire. Just hold me tight," and just like that, within the dark, a tiny spark ignited in her mind. The laughter, the joy, the brilliant colors of a night filled with promises. It surged forth, fighting against the grim shadow that besieged them. It was a flicker so fragile she feared to acknowledge it too loudly. But the entity sensed it too. The air thickened, crackling with rage. "You think your memories can save you?" The screeched voice slithering around them. "They are gone. There's nothing left. I will not let you take him," Emily shouted defiantly, clinging to Tom as they fell deeper into the abyss. With one last push, she recalled the feeling of grass beneath her feet, the warmth of the sun on her face, the smell of fresh-cut pine mingled with laughter. "Light!" she yelled. "Be our guide." Suddenly, the warmth blazed brighter, a sliver of golden light bursting forth, cutting through the icy grip of the dark. Tom's fingers squeezed hers tightly as clarity surged within them. The brightness began to consume the shadows ever so slightly, pushing them back like an intruder denied entry. The darkness writhed, silhouettes forming faces of their fears, regrets, and doubts twisting grotesquely before them. "Stop!" Emily shouted, voice unwavering. "You will not own us." But the shadows howled in retaliation, drawing closer, whipping around them with grotesque faces. "You can't escape the truth of what you are," they hissed. "Everything you fear, everything you regret." Tom shivered beside her, his grip faltering. It wasn't just the memories this thing was feeding on. It was their fear of failure, the pang of lost potential, the weight of guilt. Remember the good. Your heart is stronger than this," Emily urged. "We are more than our mistakes." With those words, the radiant light pulsed with a fierce intensity, pushing back against the fears that clawed at them. Released from the terror-esque grip, flashes of brilliant memories ignited around them. Moments of joy, hope, and love. "Faster!" Tom shouted, kicking against the darkness that wanted to drag them under. "Focus on what we've achieved. Focus on us." But just as the light surged, the entity flared in outrage. A grotesque tendril lashed out, slicing through their warmth, striking Tom in the shoulder. "You think love will save you?" it shrieked, dark laughter echoing around them. "You will lose everything that you hold dear." Tom cried out, stumbling back, the vibrant warmth flickering as his expression twisted in pain. "Tom!" Emily screamed. As darkness wrapped around him, pulling him away, she felt her heart sink to her stomach. The air turned cold. The pulsating light flickered dangerously, dimming as shadows pressed in. "No, not him. Fight it, Tom, fight." But even as she shouted, she felt her own heart flutter with doubt. Could their courage truly overcome this beast? Or would they, just like all the others, fade into the void? Tremors rippled through them once more, a violent warning, and Emily realized the shadows weren't just feeding on fear, they were looking to isolate Tom completely from her reach. Her breath hitched as the scent of despair filled her lungs. "Together, Tom. We're still together." But would he hear her? The shadows howled, and the light began to dim again. She couldn't let it end like this. "We have to hold on. Remember us." But as the darkness tightened its grip, Emily fought against immobilizing despair. Desperation flooded her veins. She had to believe. Could she pull him back from the edge of the dark just by holding on? Or was she, too, about to be consumed? A chilling whisper skittered behind her, curling around her thoughts. "You cannot save him, not now." In a desperate moment, she wondered if she would sacrifice herself to save Tom or lose him entirely to the grip of the entity feeding on them. What choice lay before them now, when every thread of hope was slowly unraveling? Emily felt time stretch infinitely as shadows closed in, heavy with despair, while memories threatened to dissolve into the void. Tom, the warm light of hope flickering beside her, was slipping away. "Tom!" she cried, desperation roaring in her chest. "We need each other. Remember what we fought for." The burbling darkness hissed around her, stifling her words, clawing at her resolve. "You won't save him," it sneered, its voice echoing with twisted glee. "Give in. Let the darkness take you both." "No," Emily yelled back, drawing strength from somewhere deep within. "Tom, you are not alone. Fight. Fight with me." She could still feel his presence, could still imagine his laughter and the bond they shared, vibrant and unyielding. In that darkness, the memories welled like a flash flood, a desperate wave crashing over her doubts. The warmth of every shared moment filled her heart. Sunlit days by the lake, laughter echoing over crackling bonfires, the feeling of pure joy as they celebrated life. "You are more than this, Tom. We are stronger together." "Emily." Tom's voice was a strained whisper now, desperation thickening the air. Shadows twisted around him, squeezing tighter, the underlying darkness nearing his heart. "I can't hold on, I'm scared." "Don't let fear win," Emily shouted, feeling tears prick at her eyes. "Remember who you are. You're not alone. We can fight this together." The light within her fluctuated and burned stronger. She gripped his hand tightly, feeling the pulse of their shared courage igniting the air around them. With renewed determination, she squeezed her eyes shut and focused hard, wanting to draw from the strength they had built over the years. "Tom, listen to my voice. Think of everything we've faced," she urged, staring into the consuming shadows, searching for Tom. "We survived everything. We can beat this. We have faced darkness before, and we will face it again. Together." Suddenly, a raw, primal beastly roar echoed all around them, and the very walls of the factory trembled, rattling loose debris that poured down like rain. Tom, surrounded, wrestled against despair, but with Emily's call resonating in his heart, something shifted. Together, they shouted in unison, the echo of their voices synthesized into one sound rising like a battle cry. As they held onto each other with every ounce of strength, the light surged around them like an unstoppable tide, washing over the shadows and turning dread into piercing brilliance. The entity's scream fell away, astonished, as if every soul it had ever consumed flared to life alongside their refusal to break. With every second, the radiant glow expanded, forcing the darkness back, revealing grotesque forms of despair retreating in fear. The walls shook violently, collapsing under the radiant fury of their defiance. They could feel it, the shadows were losing their grip, their connection weakening. "Pull it back," Tom yelled, his voice powerful once more, matching her fervor. Back into the darkness. In that moment of clarity, Emily felt an indescribable connection to Tom, a bond unbreakable. On 3, 1, 2, 3, they thrust their combined will forward, casting shimmering light into the void. The entity howled as the incandescent warmth engulfed it, devouring all shadows in sight. A final scream echoed through the factory, the kind that carried the weight of many lost souls, a cacophony of suffering dissolving into oblivion. The dark mass shrank, dimming to mere shadows that flitted across the room, terrified echoes being vanquished. Light flooded the heart of the factory, illuminating every dark corner, banishing despair completely. Emily felt tears cascading down her cheeks. This was a release, freedom reclaiming the oppressive space around them. "We did it. We're free," Emily shouted, collapsing into Tom's waiting arms. Laughter bubbled forth as the energy shifted, the lights brightening into a warm glow. They embraced, the darkness finally lifted, leaving only echoes of the past. The factory transformed before their eyes, the rust fell away like an expired memory, revealing the beauty hidden beneath, a sanctuary rather than a prison. They stood surrounded by flickering lights and dust motes dancing in the newfound radiance. As their hearts slowly returned to rhythms of comfort, they took a breath, feeling the echo of lost souls whispering a gentle goodbye. Each haunted voice now a lesson learned, each shadow transformed into strength. Hand in hand, they turned toward the once ominous exit, now bathed in golden light, beckoning them toward freedom. This was their future. "Let us go home," Emily whispered, the warmth of hope igniting their next steps. As they walked away from the realm that once held them prisoner, they promised each other to keep fighting. Life wasn't just about surviving, it was about living, and they had carved a story of light and resilience that would echo forever. As the doors swung shut behind them, sealing away the ghosts, Emily and Tom could finally see beyond shadows. They would carry this fight forward, stronger and forever bonded, an unquenchable beacon of courage in a world filled with darkness. Help light the way for others. If you love stories like this, subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive tales. Smash that like button now to rock the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild escape. And don't wait even one more second, grab your phone and share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is what keeps this channel alive. Show the love.